Hello there and welcome back to my channel. If you are new, my name is Michelle Ferré and I am a 4th grade teacher in Maryland. As many of you hopefully know by now, I started something this year that I've been calling the Teacher Monthly Challenge. Basically, every month of 2020, I am challenging myself to try something new or a little bit different than what I've done before. I'm trying to keep them as teachery related as I can. So let's do a quick recap. For the month of January, I left school every single day at the end of my contract hours. For the month of February, I woke up at 5 a.m. every day. It was rough. For the month of March, I had no caffeine, also rough. And for the entire month of April, I wrote a letter to my students every single day. Now for the month of May, I decided to work only contract hours. Now this was different than January because in January I had to leave school at the end of my contract hours, but I allowed myself to get there early and I allowed myself to work on school related things after school. But for May, I could literally only work on school things during my contract hours. Now for me, because we have been online teaching, that means I was working every single day from 8 a.m. to 11 a.m. and then from 1 p.m. to 4 p.m. That means I did not work before school, I did not work during my lunchtime, and I did not work after school or on the weekends. Now this included all elements of my job responsibilities, so all of my lesson planning, all of my grading, and all of my communication, meaning emails, texts, phone calls, were all during those contract hours. But I'm gonna give a little caveat here, and this was only because of the nature of online teaching. I did allow myself to check emails outside of my contract hours. So sometimes I would wake up 7:30 in the morning, quickly check my emails, or during lunch I would read over my emails, or after school. Now I did not allow myself to respond to any emails outside of my contract hours, but because we're doing online teaching and emergencies come up, I wanted to make sure that I was reading my emails so I knew if there was something urgent I had to respond to. Now let's start by talking about my expectations because one of the reasons I didn't do this challenge sooner is because I thought it was going to be very hard for me. I am very accustomed to working most of the time at night, not typically in the morning, but at night when I get home from school, I work a lot. I do a lot of work on the weekends, and not all of that work is always related to teaching. I have a lot of other work obligations such as YouTube and my podcast and TPT that I have to do. However, I did become very comfortable with throwing in a little grading on the weekends or a little lesson planning, and I knew this was going to be a big adjustment for me. Especially during this time with online teaching, because those of you who are in the same boat as I am, you know online teaching is a lot more work than teaching in person. So honestly, I was curious to see how this would go, but overall I had high hopes for myself. I know that when I set a goal, I pretty typically end up reaching it. So now let's talk about what actually happened. At the very beginning of this challenge, the number one thing I had to get used to was not getting everything done on that day and leaving work for the next day. That was hard for me because I'm that type of person who doesn't want to put things off. I'd rather do it now so I don't have to do it tomorrow. But I had to get used to sometimes ending my day and still having items on my to-do list and going, you know what, it's okay, I can do that tomorrow. Day one of only working contract hours, it's a Friday, so that works out exceptionally well, but I definitely had that first taste of wanting to keep working but having to force myself not to. I have planning for the last 90 minutes of the day, at least while we are online teaching. So I spent a good chunk of that time today recording some audio chapter things of a book that my students and I were reading in school, The One and Only Ivan, that we did not get to finish. My county is allowing us to do these online readings for students because they are getting permission from the publishers. So I was recording all of the audio files for next week when we are going to finish the book, and it was about 3:45. I had just finished recording the audio files and I wanted to get them scheduled on Google Classroom so I didn't have to worry about it next week, but my coworker ended up calling me and we ended up talking, and by the time we finished it was after 4 o'clock, which means I was done my contract hours and I could no longer spend time on Google Classroom getting them scheduled. So I had to drop it and leave it, and it's fine. fine because Mondays was already scheduled. I had done that earlier this week, and I will get to the rest of it next week, and it's not the end of the world. And I'm just gonna be honest with you, there were some days where I wanted to keep working outside of contract hours, not because I was being an overachiever, not because I wanted to finish my to-do list, but because I was bored. It is day 7, and I have a dilemma because technically it's 5:30 p.m., which means I should not be working on school, but I want to because I'm just sitting here. Billy hasn't called me yet, he's still at work, so I'm just killing time until he gets home, and I don't really have any housework to do. I am pretty caught up on all my business stuff. And so part of me wants to go ahead and work on stuff for school. I can get a little bit more grading done, but I'm forcing myself not to. It kind of hurts a little bit, but I'm sticking to the plan. One thing that helped with that was binging Netflix shows, but also going for a lot of walks. I felt like once I forced myself to get out of the house, I was no longer thinking about the work that I could be doing, and I was more occupied with my time. Now, there were some other days where honestly I was very happy to just be done working at the end of my contract hours because I was stressed or I was overwhelmed. Today is one of those days where it is not hard for me to work contract hours because I am so ready to get off the computer, get up out of my seat. My shoulders hurt, my back hurts. I must have been like crunched over today. I don't know what it is, but I definitely am just like done being on the computer. I have a headache. So today was a very easy day to have myself stop working at 4 o'clock. With this whole online teaching thing, because I'm sitting at a computer all day long, I get so much tension up in my shoulders. I'm definitely the kind of person that holds my tension and my stress in my shoulders and my neck. And there were some days where 4 o'clock came around and I was like, you know what? You don't even have to beg me. I am not touching anything work related the rest of the day. Now, I'm gonna be honest with you all. I did have one day where I worked outside of contract hours, but let me explain. Here's the thing. We all know with online teaching, one of the biggest obstacles has been getting our students to be able to engage online. Families all have different schedules. They all have different availability of devices and internet access, and that has been a huge obstacle. So I did have a day, I think it was like day 12-ish. Day 12, it is 5:15 p.m. and technically I just finished working for the day, so I'm outside of contract hours, but hear me out, okay? First of all, this was a student who had been having trouble accessing the whole distance learning thing online. She finally got a device and internet and all that, so I had to get her caught up on assignments, and I worked with her on Google Meet for 2 straight hours. So it ran past the end of the day, which technically is at 4 p.m. However, I am going to make up for it later this week. I don't know what day yet because I kind of have to play it by ear, but one of the days this week, I'm going to take the last hour of my planning time and I'm gonna use it as just personal time. So technically I'm still working the same number of contract hours this week, but I technically worked more today than I will one of the other days this week. Hopefully that makes sense. It's kind of how I'm making this work because obviously I still have to put my students' needs first, especially with this whole online learning thing. So I feel like that's a good compromise. So I feel like that still counts. I mean, under the circumstances, I did the best I could. But overall, I was able to get my work done. I didn't get that behind. I had my lessons all scheduled like a week in advance. My grading I was able to stay on top of. Most cases I was grading it either the day students turned it in or the day after. If it was a weekend, then I would, grade whatever they did over the weekend on Monday, but I was able to stay up to date on it all. And more than anything, I loved having extra free time. I loved being able to go for walks or watch Netflix shows or play a game with Billy. I've been cooking more. I was able to do all of these things because I forced myself not to do schoolwork. Now let's talk about what I learned. The reason I love doing these challenges is because I get to reflect on my practices that I've been doing, and then when I change it, I can figure out if that either works for me or doesn't work for me, and it just opens my eyes to a lot of things. The number one thing I learned from this challenge is that your work fills your time. Here's what I mean by that. If you are given, let's say, a week to complete a project, most likely you are gonna stretch it out over a week, and it's going to take you a week to do it. But if you only are given 2 days to complete that same project, you will find a way to get it done in just those 2 days. So honestly, forcing myself to work contract hours forced myself to be more productive, and it forced me to really get my work done during those set hours instead of telling myself, well, it's fine if I don't get it done during planning. I can work on it tonight before I go to bed, or I can work on it over the weekend. But forcing myself to stick to those rigid hours forced myself, I've used the word force like at least 15 times, but I don't know a better way to put it. It really helped my mind realize that I can get it done in that amount of time if that's all I'm going to allow myself. I also learned there is always more work to do. As soon as you finish your to-do list one day, you're going to fill it back up the next day. And as morbid as it is, you're gonna have a to-do list until the day you die. I'm sorry, but it had to be said. So instead of making your to-do list your priority, you need to prioritize your to-do list. You see what I did there? And I really learned to get the things that have to get done first, and then put off the things that aren't a priority for the next day, and eventually those things would become a priority, and I was able to get the same amount of stuff done just in less time. Day 27, there's only 4 days left of this challenge, 2 of those being school days, 2 of those being weekends, and I finally feel like I have gotten used to having less time, and I have adapted to be able to get my work done in less time, which is a really good feeling. Lately, during my planning time, I get my lessons scheduled, I get my grading done, I get my emails answered, and some days I have extra time, and then I'm like looking over my to-do list. I'm like, well, what else can I fit in? And that's a really good feeling. Now, it may be due to the end of the school year being soon, I don't know, but regardless, it just goes to show you that you can adapt if you truly make it a priority and you decide that it's something you're going to do, you can totally make it work. I also learned that stepping away from schoolwork really is a necessity, and that's hard for me to admit because ever since I was little, I've always been the type of person who would just do more. I like doing work, I like feeling busy. I mean, I think back to when I was in high school, I remember I was in a business management class, and at one point I literally sat down and I did all of my homework for the entire semester in like one weekend because I knew like he assigned certain assignments from each chapter of the book, and I did them all in one weekend because I like to feel like I'm getting ahead, I like to feel like I'm being productive and I'm busy. But I've realized that me being busy or me doing things, it doesn't have to be work related. I can fill my time by going out and going for walks, or by reading, or by cooking, or by cleaning. Like, I have all these other things that I can use to fill my time instead of just work. And finally, I learned the amount of time that you spend working on schoolwork does not make you a better or worse teacher. I feel like as teachers, we are trained and conditioned to believe that whoever the last person is leaving the parking lot for the day is the hardest working teacher, and therefore they're the best teacher. But that's definitely not the case. In fact, it's better to be more efficient with your time. It's not the amount of time that you're spending, it's the amount of work you're getting done during that time. So someone who's getting a day's worth of work done in 2 or 3 hours is working just as hard as someone who spends all day to do that amount of work. And honestly, the amount of time that you spend on any work doesn't make you a better teacher. What makes you a better teacher is the relationships you're building with your students, your content knowledge, your knowledge of different strategies and, I don't want to say philosophies, but different ways of teaching methods that work for your students, and your ability to collaborate, and all these other factors that don't surround time. Now, finally, let's talk about kind of my plan moving forward. I am definitely going to continue not doing work on the weekends because my weekends need to be for me, and it needs to be for me spending time with Billy and taking care of my health and fitness and doing things that I'm passionate about outside of the classroom. I think for so many years, my only passion has been teaching. And as much as I love teaching, it's okay to have other passions, and I need to have the weekend time to be able to explore those. Now, in terms of working at nights, I think when the fall starts back up, first of all, I have no idea what it's going to look like, so I don't really know what I'm going to do, but normally when I'm at school, and this kind of goes back to what I did in January, I stay at school until Billy is leaving work because then we meet at the gym, and that just worked really well for my schedule. I think I would still allow myself to do that. I definitely don't see myself getting to work super early because that's never been me, but I will allow myself that extra hour and a half, 2 hours after school to get some extra things done, and then, hopefully that will alleviate my time on the weekends and I won't have to work on the weekends. Before I end this video, I'm gonna go ahead and reveal my June challenge, which I'm excited about, and you should be excited about because it will benefit some of you if you are following me on Instagram. So, I don't really know what to call this, but for the month of June, I'm going to do a teacher appreciation support challenge. Basically, I want to use this month as a way to give back to other teachers, and I will do that by giving back to a teacher in some way every single day. So a couple of ideas I already have in my head. I definitely want to do a lot of giveaways, some gift cards and things, because teachers spend way too much of their own money. I also want to help shout out some other teachers that I think deserve recognition, and I'm gonna do some like personal phone calls with some teachers, which I thought would be really fun for both of us, and just a way for me to help support other teachers. So if you are interested in that, make sure you are subscribed to my channel and hit that notification bell so you do not miss any future videos. If you enjoyed this video, please go ahead and give it a thumbs up. If you enjoyed hearing my reflection or you want to try it out yourself, give the video a thumbs up. Leave a comment. I would still love to know what other future Teacher Monthly challenges you would like to see. I have a couple in mind. I have a few ideas, but I still need a couple more. So I would love to hear from you all. And as always, thank you for watching. I love you all so much. Don't forget to put your positive pants on, and I'll catch you in the next one.